Welcome to this podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about lab procedures. And guess what? Lab work or lab safety is more than just safety goggles and apron. We have to see it as one stepping stone for students to take responsibility, but also a stepping stone for students to realize that they can learn once curiosity sets in. So welcome to my channel. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Alain Faber. I've been teaching for more than 25 years, science and a variety of other subjects. And tonight we're talking about lab safety. So let's see if we can check to make sure the sound is doing well, to make sure that you can hear. Everything is working well, so that's outstanding. So we are in week 2 of my semester, and we have done 2 labs so far, one demo, and we're doing our 3rd lab on Thursday, which is tomorrow. You're gonna say, why do I do so many labs in my class? Well, there's a few things for that. First of all, I do believe in hands-on activity, so that's my first belief. Second, I do like to do hands-on activity, and I've learned throughout the years that a lab or hands-on activity is the best way to raise curiosity of the student, be having them answer questions and be interested in what we do. Now, keep in mind, some people will say, well, creating labs and setting up labs takes a lot of time, and I don't really have time for that. I do agree with you, but if you don't do labs with your students, how would they learn? Other people would say, well, something could go wrong, someone could get hurt. I don't want to deal with that. I understand that. But guess what? If students never have a chance to do labs, how will they be able to get better? Other people will say, well, if something bad happens, something breaks, and there's a spill, I need to deal with it. That is true. However, I do believe that's also a learning opportunity for students to take responsibility. And if something happens, well, not to see it as the end of the world, but is to assess the situation, to take care of it, to clean it up if needed, and then learn from it. Because science is never something where it works or it doesn't work. There's a range of success and there's a range of failure. And we need, as scientists and helping junior scientists, to realize that if they are taking risks and there's some failures along the way, it's not the end of the world. It's one thing to address, one stepping stone closer to possibly a career in science for them. So hopefully you're going to be enjoying the different topics I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share 3 segments. The first segment will be creating a culture of safety consciousness. The second topic will be managing multiple lab groups effectively. And the third part will be handling unexpected situations during experiments. So let's see if we can chat about this. So my first topic about creating a culture of safety consciousness. Now, the whole thing here is that in order for students to feel comfortable, for students to have the confidence to do lab, for students to ask questions if they're not sure, they have to do lab. So that's the first thing. And I believe that the best way to get students to feel more comfortable with doing lab is to do labs that includes their prior knowledge. Now, I teach students in grade 9. That means that they've been in the school system for a long time. They've been cooking at home for a long time. They've been having fun with friends, having parties, and doing breakfasts or lunches or dinner together. So if that's the case, there's nothing better than use their experience from what they've had in the past to work from there. So you're going to say, well, what labs did you do so far this year? We're in week 2, and we've already done 3 activities. Well, my first activity was about density. Well, you're going to say, why did I choose the density? Is because in grade 9 in science, we have a section about physical properties. So I like to do a density of a metal. So I have a variety of pieces of aluminum, copper, as well as brass. And I get students to start using the equipment. So first, to find the density, they have to find the mass. That means that they need to use the electronic scales. Now, many of them have used the scales to weigh themselves. Some of them are using a scale for food at home, but many of them have never used a scale. So it gives them a chance to work on it, to tear the scale, to bring it back to zero, to see if it doesn't work, how to fix it. So in many ways, that's an amazing skill. The other one, to find the volume, I'm using overflow cans or graduated cylinder. So if we use a graduated cylinder, many of them I haven't seen them before. So we can, if you put an object in a graduated cylinder, for example, one that is 100 milliliter, you can actually see the level of water changing. If that's the case, they can find the volume. With an overflow can, they can also find the volume by recuperating the water coming out. Now keep in mind that an overflow can is something they've done before. They've been to the pool, they've played in water, they've, let's see what else. In the kitchen, they've also played in water, in the sink, they did dishes. So all of these has some sense of familiarity. So that's a good thing. So next one, if there's an accident, it's just water, we can clean it. If they have questions, they can help each other. And what happens is that first lab allows the students to raise their confidence, saying, okay, I've done the first lab, I've collected data, and we take the data and we are graphing it. And guess what? A density lab with a variety of pieces of aluminum would give you an amazing correlation. Like it's a linear correlation, it's a beauty. So that is the first thing we need to do. And the idea of prior learning is that often students, and I've noticed that since COVID, they tend to do a lot less activity and a lot more screen time, and they love to observe others do things. They enjoy watching videos of people doing things, but to actually do activities, sometimes it's harder. I notice that because the dexterity of students, I find it's a bit not as prevalent now than before COVID. And the reason for that is that maybe they're not cooking as much at home. They haven't done as many labs in elementary school. So what happens here is this idea of trusting their hands to be able to do actions to get a result is something they need to work on. So when I do labs in a classroom, one of my purpose is to get them to do experiments, to do hands-on activity, and therefore raise their confidence that they can do it. Very nice. The second segment we're going to talk about today is about managing multiple lab groups effectively. So here for this one, you have to keep in mind that I always start with activities that are not complicated. So what did we do today? Oh yeah, today we looked at absorption of water by diapers. You're going to say, well, that's a silly activity. In many ways, it is a silly activity, but I use that activity with them to follow a very specific procedure. They had 9 steps to do, and they were very well laid out. So what they did, we looked at a procedure together. I sent them to the lab bench, and I told them, here's the procedure. I want you to follow step 1 to 9. And what they did, they took step 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then they followed the procedure. Now, the idea that it was with diapers, some of them said, oh, they were holding the diaper as if it was dirty. I said, no, they were brand new. And what happens is that they, first of all, they were able to follow the procedure. We looked at the list of materials, and we also looked at qualitative observations. So what happened here, they were very busy doing different activities. And the beauty with that is, first of all, with procedure, I have a sense of that I'm less stressed because I know that they know what to do. The next thing, because of the procedure, they know what they have to do, and therefore they also feel more comfortable. And so every time we do an activity in class, it allows students to learn something with respect to lab procedure. So in the first segment, when I talked about my lab about the density, keep in mind that the first 5 things that I work with my students are, we need to look at a scientific question, the hypothesis, the variables. So this is part of the discussions before. We look at how to create table of values for result and do basic graphing. So these were the 5 parts we did so far. We're going to do those 5 parts many times. But today, adding the procedure and the list of materials, and for them to do qualitative descriptions, then as you can see, we're building the knowledge base for them to know what is important in the lab. So how did it make the lab group effective today? Well, there was three classes. One class, they decided to be in groups of four. They did not want to be by themselves. It's a matter of trust. So it was five groups of five. For the afternoon, I had, for period four, interestingly enough, everybody wanted to do it in pairs. So a few people were in groups of two. So that was very interesting that way. And then for the last period, there was a few people by twos and threes and four. So depending on the confidence level of the students, it was interesting to see what they could do. Very nice. So the procedure was important and very good. And then they got results. Now, because they used diapers, they all knew about diapers. We had talked about what's the purpose of having diapers, which is to absorb a liquid. So they knew the principle or the premise of what we wanted to do. But to be able to take a diaper, to break it down, to get the absorbing materials inside the diaper, this is something that most of them had not done before, had not seen before. And as soon as they took these little pellets, and I have to see what the composition is. But by adding water, they could see them absorbing water. And the more water they added, it would absorb the water. And the beauty with that is that they could see an instant reaction, no, an instant effect, because it was not a chemical reaction. So that means that it was safe. It was a physical property of that matter. So it was soaking up the water. It was not dangerous. Even if someone dropped it on the ground, it was not the end of the world. I did the experiment in Ziploc bags so we could toss the whole thing afterwards in the garbage bin, because I did not want to put any of that in the sink, causing issues with the plumbing. But the idea here is that today they were able, and it went very well. People were, first of all, disgusted of diapers. They thought it was funny. They were interested in discovering there was something hidden in the experiment, and then they could see quickly an event happening, and they could observe. So what's happening is that is raising their interest and their skills as well. Now, last weekend, and I haven't found the answer to that question, I was trying to figure out what's the best way to get students to be interested in your class. And the best answer I could find was, if you can find a way to have your students present in class when they're there, but also curious about what we're doing. I think these are the two aspects we need to look into. So keeping the curiosity alive. Is that the best answer? There's a lot more thinking I have to do. But if you can keep your students interested in, no, if you can have your students be curious about what we're doing, it's going to help them be more interested. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think that helps with multiple groups, because the groups are there with each other. And as I mentioned, we're looking at procedures, and everybody knew what they needed to do. Now, you have to keep in mind that this is the beginning of the semester. I'm being very, very specific about the activity I do to build the skills they need. Because by the time we finish the semester in June, I will give them an opportunity to create a question based on what we have learned, or based on what they've seen online or otherwise. They will have a chance to create a question, and from there, create a hypothesis, look at variables, do data collection, and create their procedure. And before they do the lab, I always look at their procedure to make sure that it is safe and they have all the parts they need to do. And I have a whole semester to make them feel comfortable with their abilities, and I think that's the key. So for the first one, having them know that what safety is, because if you're doing labs that have minimum possibility of creating safety issues, it helps you training the students to be better. And the second one, about multiple lab group, I sometimes ask them to, let's see, I haven't done that yet, but so far I'm asking them to be with their own friends so that they feel comfortable chatting and talking about science. As the weeks are going through, I'm going to create different groups so that they can actually work with other people based on lab work or discussions, debates, and such. I think it will be exciting. So let's see what is the third part of this podcast today. So the third part is handling unexpected situations during experiments. Now, if you think, so some people say, well, the best thing is not to do lab or experiments. If you don't do any experiments, for sure there's no issues that will happen. I know some people, some students in some schools where they don't do labs at all. It's all simulations or everything is theoretical except the last lab they do. I don't believe that is the best way. So what happens here is that unexpected events will happen. That is part of doing science. It's trying to answer a question. It's trying to find data and measure data. Things will happen. Glassware will break. There might be a spill of water or otherwise. You might do a lab and what happened? The results are inconclusive. So you have to redo something. You have to redo your experiment or change your question. Sometimes there's some people that feel like they want to run around and like in the safety contract, we call it like horseplay in a lab. Now it's something that we talk every week for safety during every lab before they get there. And I tell them if they have energy, I have no problem for them to go outside, run the track a couple of times, and come back in, and then be able to just to rest and be able to focus. Because students that are excited will have energy to bring forward, and then we have to work with that. I'm not saying that they need to be punished. They just need a way for their energy to go out, so that when they're back in the lab, their body doesn't have as much energy to move and have the jitter, and therefore they can focus on safety. And if you have students working together and build the safety, then they realize it's not only their safety, it's the safety of their classmates, it is the safety of the teachers, because I always tell them the purpose of being safe and staying safe is that we come to school, we learn about science and we do science, then we can be safe, we go home at night to do all the things we love to do, so that the day after we can come back and do more science. And for that, we need to be safe and be mindful of safety. The next one here is too much fun. It does happen. So today we had the absorption of water in diapers, and there's some people that were quite excited. And the whole thing is having fun. It's not a difficulty. And then I realized that some of them, it was, let's see, what was it? It was that group there. They were two groups of friends. They were together around a bench, but instead of being a group of three, they were seven, because they put two labs together and they were all side by side because they wanted to see what was happening together. What did I say? I said, okay, how about one group stay here and the next group go there, do your experiment, and then you can show each other. So what happened? They were very happy to see what they had done so far. They went separate ways to do the next step, then they came back again. Now, what I love about science labs and experimentation is that you can do those stepping up, and being able to stand up and not being on stools or on chairs make a big difference. And the reason for that is just standing up takes some of the energy and the edges out. Some people, sometimes they will rock back and forth, and sometimes they will go and walk to see how friends are seeing things, and they're coming back to their benches. The whole idea here is that having fun, it is great. Being able to stand up and be able to move a little bit, that is great as well. Because I do believe that if students have fun and they're curious, they're going to talk to each other about what they do. And if they talk about what they do, they'll talk about science. And the whole purpose of doing science is to talk about science, communicate about science, get new ideas. And these students will change the world eventually. And that's the beauty of that. The next one I have was, oh yes, In the last few months, so previous semester, I had students who, you may have had students like this where they tend to be moving very fast and they have hands everywhere. And then you worried a little bit about if something will fall down because they tend to be very active. And for the students, it's funny because often when I had labs, sometimes I had something and I would ask him, can you go to the office to send that to the um, to the secretary and then tell her to put it in my mailbox. They would go downstairs and go to the office, come back up. But just that was giving some of the energy to go down and be able to be more relaxed in the lab. Second, hands everywhere. So when we were doing labs that had minimum issues or minimum safety concerns, then I would go around and the proximity made a big difference. Now, as we went through, so that was the first 3 months of the semester. For the fourth one, when it was a bit trickier, then I would point out to the students, giving the person ideas on how to be the best way so that that him as a student and his classmates will have all the safety necessary. But his friends also knew that, so he would just do some part of the experiment and walk away, then come back in, and it was better. And at some point, I told them as a group, you know what, it's a bit more dangerous, so I want you to do it close to me so I can see you and monitor you a little bit more for safety reason. And they did that, and they were much more conscious of what they were doing and what was happening with the hands and such. So the proximity was good, and I had mentioned to them, it's for your safety. I know sometimes we want to go around and people were aware, and when we're together, that made a big difference. And that worked well. At the end of the semester, when they chose their question, and they chose a question where there was a lot more physical activities. They work with water. It's something with uh, I forget what it was, but it was something with measurement using um, floatability and water. Water is nothing to worry about. It was a bit of explosive as well because it was something that was in water and how it would float up. They had a lot of fun. They cleaned up the water and it worked out nicely. But I saw there was an improvement of 1,000% from the first week all the way to the end of the semester. The only way people can get better in labs is to do labs. Hoping that the students will be better the following year is not helping. Anyway, that's my perspective, and I respect everybody that do their classes the way they do. I like hands-on, so I do more of those, even though more and more I'm sharing with my colleagues some of those ideas to get the students to do more hands-on activities as well. So there it is. So this is my podcast for tonight, keeping in mind, so the topic was lab safety. It's beyond the safety goggles and apron. We're allowed to have fun, we're allowed to experiment, we're allowed to build skills so that not only in the classroom, in the science lab, we can build confidence, we can raise the curiosity for the students. And ultimately, we want students to know, do they want to continue science? Yes or no. If they don't like hands-on activities and do labs, may as well do them as early as possible to make a decision. There's nothing worse than a student in grade 11 or 12, or sometimes in post-secondary institutions, realizing that they chose the wrong program because they never had the opportunity to confirm if they liked something or did not like something. On this, I'm going to wish you an amazing evening. Thank you very much for being there, and I will see you next Wednesday at 7:30 for another podcast. Take care.